Welcome to True Tears Stories. Please like this video and subscribe to True Tears Stories. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. He didn't mean to stop outside the bedroom door. In truth, he hadn't even realized she was on the phone. He'd come home early, earlier than usual, that is. The office had been stifling. The silence between cubicles felt too loud, so he'd left, craving the comfort of his own home. The irony wasn't lost on him. The door wasn't fully closed, just enough to suggest privacy without fully demanding it. Her voice floated through the crack, not hushed, just relaxed, loose, the way it got when she thought no one was listening. No, seriously, he's harmless, like emotionally gentle, sweet. Exactly the kind of guy you marry first so you can get your mistakes out of the way. A pause. A laugh. That laugh. Yeah, I call him my starter husband. He doesn't even know. Then the sound of a wine glass hitting the nightstand. His heart didn't race. That surprised him. No hot burst of anger. No tidal wave of betrayal. Just a slow sinking. Like the floor had become sand beneath him. He stepped back quietly, enough to make his presence known with the smallest shuffle, and then walked to the kitchen like he hadn't heard a word. She didn't follow. She came out 20 minutes later in the silk robe he bought her 2 anniversaries ago, looking flushed and pleased with herself, hair slightly damp. "You're home early," she said, smiling. "Traffic was light," he replied, setting a mug in the sink. She kissed his cheek absently as she passed. It felt like a habit more than affection. That night, as she curled beside him in bed, thumbing through her phone with her back turned, he stared at the ceiling. He didn't ask about the call, didn't ask who she was speaking to. He just counted the seconds between her breaths until the rhythm told him she was asleep. He wasn't angry. Not yet. Anger would have given her too much room in his chest. He felt something closer to stillness, a numb clarity that settled between his ribs and sat there, heavy but quiet. In the morning, she made her usual smoothie, playing music on her phone like nothing had changed. She handed him a glass and kissed his temple. He watched her move through the kitchen, effortless, beautiful, curated. She was always composed in the mornings, more polished than real. The kind of woman who posted recipes she never followed, who laughed just a beat too late at jokes she didn't quite listen to. He knew that. He'd known for years. But something about hearing her say it out loud, starter husband, made it real in a way nothing else had. He looked at her across the island, her mouth stained with blackberry, and wondered how long she'd been rehearsing her exit. Or if she thought she'd never need one, that he would just quietly fade out of the frame when she was done using him for the practice round. That day, he didn't go into the office. Instead, he opened the closet in the guest room and started making space. He cleared a drawer, then 2, pulled out the extra set of sheets, washed them, folded them fresh. She came home late, saying she stopped for drinks with a few people from work. Her shoes clicked a little too confidently through the hall. Her laugh trailed a little too quickly behind her. He asked if she'd eaten. She said, "I grabbed something." And he said, "You should invite him over sometime." She froze just for a fraction of a second. Then she tilted her head. "Who?" "The one who's not harmless," he replied. Her mouth parted, then closed again. Her eyes narrowed slightly, calculating. "I don't know what you think you heard," she started. "I heard exactly what you said." A long pause. Then she laughed. dismissive. You're being dramatic. I'm being direct. She leaned against the counter now, arms folded, mask slipping just enough. So what? You want to punish me? You going to kick me out? Tell everyone? He shook his head. No. Then what? He met her gaze. You said I was your starter husband. Her lips twitched. So I figured, he continued calmly, you could go ahead and start. She blinked, not understanding at first. I made space, he said, nodding toward the hall. In the guest room. She stared at him like he'd grown another head. I mean, if he's going to be around anyway, he added, tone light now, nearly casual, might as well be practical. She didn't speak, didn't move, and for the first time in a long time, he saw her clearly, not as the woman he fell in love with, but as the one who'd been quietly replacing that woman for years. He turned back to the sink, rinsed his glass. Behind him, the silence stretched. He let it. She didn't bring it up again. Not the next morning, not after dinner, not even 3 days later, when he left the house, keys on the hallway table, and added, without emotion, he can let himself in whenever. She didn't laugh this time. She didn't deny anything either. Instead, she stared at the keys like they were a dare. On Friday evening, Jared came home to find a car he didn't recognize parked slightly crooked in the driveway. Through the window, he caught the faint shadow of someone moving inside. The soft bass thump of a playlist playing through the living room speakers. He stepped through the door like he was walking into a new exhibit, careful not to disturb the display. And there he was, Trevor, the boyfriend, the one whose name she hadn't said out loud to him, but he'd seen it on restaurant receipts in the laundry, on her phone when it lit up in bed beside her. The man had the kind of face that smiled too much and said too little. His shirt was crisp, untucked, like he was trying to appear both relaxed and expensive. He held a beer from Jared's fridge. Hey, man, Trevor said, with a grin like they were old college buddies. She told me you were chill. Respect. Jared nodded once, walked past him, and disappeared into the kitchen. The mug in his hand didn't tremble. He placed it gently in the sink and started the water. Just a little. Just enough to muffle the pulse in his ears. A moment later, she appeared beside Trevor, her hair tied back like she always did when she felt too exposed. Her eyes flicked over Jared's face, waiting for him to break the scene. He didn't. She cleared her throat. Trevor might stay for a few days. Jared dried his hands on the towel. I assumed. And with that, he walked into the guest room, his old office, now freshly made, and pulled the spare blanket from the trunk at the foot of the bed. Later that night, he sat on the back porch, the cool breeze brushing across his face, and listened to the distant echo of their laughter drifting through the open window. He didn't envy it, didn't want to trade places. If anything, he felt strangely detached, like watching a movie he'd already seen before, but from the wrong side of the screen. The next morning, Trevor tried to make small talk over coffee. You make this strong, huh? He said, grimacing. No wonder she's always wired. Jared stirred his cup once. There's decaf in the cabinet. Trevor chuckled. Nah, it's cool. I'll get used to it. He acted like he lived there, like the house was his now. His hand grazed the back of her neck when she passed. He reached into the fridge without asking. He changed the playlist on the speaker system. Small things, but they added up like pebbles in a shoe. That weekend, Jared cleaned out the garage, took everything that had collected dust during the marriage, the wedding photo canvas, the broken patio heater they'd never returned, the fondue set from her sister, and laid them out by the curb. Let them go. She watched him from the kitchen window, arms folded. She didn't stop him. That night, she asked if they could talk. He followed her into the dining room, where she sat with her hands folded like they were in couples therapy. "This isn't sustainable," she said. Jared nodded. "You're probably right. I don't know what point you're trying to make." He tilted his head. "I'm not trying to make a point. I'm letting you make your choices." "You don't seem hurt." "I was," he admitted, "until I realized I don't owe you the performance of heartbreak." She leaned back, stung. "You always did this. You made me feel like the villain, even when I was just lost. Calling me your starter husband wasn't you being lost. It was you being sure." Her mouth parted slightly. Her expression twisted into something that resembled guilt, but didn't quite commit. He stood. "Trevor can stay as long as he likes," he said evenly. "But just so we're clear, he's not the one replacing me. You are." She said nothing, just sat there with her mouth closed, finally out of comebacks. In the hallway, Jared passed Trevor, who gave him an awkward nod. "She okay?" "Probably the most honest version of herself I've seen in years." He walked past without looking back. The truth wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It just had to be seen. The days settled into a strange rhythm. Jared rising early, leaving before they were awake, returning after dark to a house that no longer felt like his, and somehow more his than ever. The silence between him and her wasn't cold. It was clean, stripped of pretense. There were no more forced smiles, no more checking in, just a truce of detachment. Trevor had made himself at home. His clothes hung in the hallway closet now, his shoes piled by the door. His toothbrush sat beside Jared's in the bathroom they once shared. And every morning, Jared watched as more of his life was edited out of the frame, like a background extra in his own marriage. He didn't argue. He didn't fight for space. He simply observed. Noted how Trevor never rinsed out the coffee pot, how he always left cabinet doors open, how he wore cologne indoors, like every moment was a job interview. He was loud, with opinions about everything: music, politics, even Jared's book collection. He once remarked, "You still read these?" Like the very idea of literature was antique. Jared smiled politely and said nothing. But he watched. She had changed too. Not just in the way she moved or spoke, but in the eyes. Like someone who'd painted herself into a corner and couldn't quite admit the color wasn't what she imagined. At dinner, she'd laugh too loudly at Trevor's jokes, then glance at Jared to see if he was listening. She started wearing makeup even at home, always trying just a little harder. It wasn't vanity, it was maintenance. As if she knew now she had to keep earning what used to be freely given. One night, Jared came home and found them arguing. Low voices behind a closed door. The kind that make the walls lean in. He didn't linger. He moved to the kitchen, started boiling water. Chose a chamomile tea he hadn't touched in months. When she entered the kitchen 10 minutes later, her face was flushed, and she wasn't wearing shoes. "He thinks you're trying to mess with us," she said flatly. Jared raised an eyebrow. "Am I?" "I don't know," she replied. "Are you?" He stirred his tea. "If me living in my own house feels like a threat, that's telling." She leaned on the counter. Her eyes were glassy. I didn't mean for it to turn out like this. You meant for him to be here, he said gently. You meant for me to find out some other way, quietly, without you ever having to say it out loud. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I'm not punishing you, Jared added. I'm witnessing you. And that truth was harder for her than anything else, because punishment could be argued with. But a mirror? A mirror never lies. Trevor moved out 2 weeks later. No announcement, just fewer shoes by the door, then none. One morning, his cologne didn't hang in the air. The music stopped playing when Jared entered a room. She stopped wearing makeup around the house. Jared never asked. She never explained. The space felt different, less like a battleground, more like a slow crumble. The foundation she'd poured her reinvention into had cracked, and now she was walking through it barefoot. She tried to reach him again. Little gestures, cooking dinner, asking if he wanted to watch something together, laughing at old photos. But it wasn't real, not anymore. It was nostalgia trying to wear the face of apology. One night, she stood in the doorway of the living room while Jared read a book, her voice barely above a whisper. I think I was wrong. He didn't look up. About what? About you being just my starter husband. He turned a page. You weren't wrong. You were just honest. She stepped forward. But what if... He finally met her gaze. You thought love was something you could upgrade. She winced. I hope next time, he continued, voice steady, you pick someone you don't need to perform for. She sank into the chair across from him, silent now, all her armor laid bare. The thing about betrayal is that it's not always loud. Sometimes it walks in wearing soft socks and drinks from your favorite mug. Sometimes it sits beside you at the dinner table, smiling. And sometimes, the loudest revenge is no revenge at all, just letting the truth breathe long enough to outlast the lie. She didn't cry when he told her he was moving out. She just stood there, arms crossed over her sweater, lips pressed into a line. Like she wanted to be angry, but couldn't find the energy to pretend it wasn't her doing. Jared was careful not to make it theatrical. He packed in quiet moments, one drawer at a time, always when she was out or in another room. No slamming of doors, no heavy sighs, just movement, like an old clock finally unwinding. The house felt oddly cooperative. The light from the windows stayed soft. The creaky stair never creaked. Even the wind outside seemed to hush, as if the walls themselves had decided they'd seen enough. He didn't take much, just the books that still mattered. The old coffee mug with the tiny chip in the rim, his grandfather's watch. He left the photos on the wall, the dishes, the blanket she always claimed first on movie nights. It wasn't spite. It was clarity. None of it belonged to him anymore. Not really. She hovered in the kitchen the morning he rolled his suitcase to the door, stirring tea she wouldn't drink, wearing the robe he'd bought her 5 Christmases ago. That was the hardest part, somehow, that she still wore the robe like nothing had changed, like some muscle memory of comfort lingered even after the warmth had left it. Are you going to tell people? She asked. Jared paused at the door. That you cheated, or that I stayed long enough to watch it break you? She looked away. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I believe you, he said softly, but believing you doesn't heal it. She followed him to the porch, arms still folded, gaze restless. Trevor texted me, she blurted. He said I scare him. Jared looked at her then, not with anger, Not even pity, just a calm sort of distance. Maybe for the first time, he said, he saw what you look like when the mask slips. Her breath caught. You said I was your starter husband, he added, voice low. But I don't think you realized. You were my ending wife. He stepped onto the porch and walked down the stairs without another glance. He didn't go far, just enough to start fresh. 2 weeks later, a package arrived at the house. No note, just a flash drive, labeled in her handwriting. Curious, she plugged it into the TV. The screen lit up, not with revenge, but remembrance. Clips from their life, unedited, unfiltered, silent footage from her birthday, the way Jared had looked at her when she wasn't looking. A snippet of her toasting him at a party. Then a voicemail, her voice, breathless and tipsy. God, you're the best thing that ever happened to me. Don't ever forget that. The screen went black. Nothing else played. She sat on the couch for hours after. She never texted him, never called, because the truth wasn't cruel. It was kind enough to let her sit with it, alone. The silence after was the kind that echoed. Jared didn't rush into a new life. He moved slowly. Morning walks before the world stirred. Dinners alone without the weight of explanation. The steady rhythm of a life no longer built around someone else's expectations. There was no playlist to drown the quiet, no frantic attempt to fill the space she left behind. He didn't need to fill it. He just needed to understand it. Sometimes, he still thought of her, not with anger, not with longing, just with the clarity that comes when a storm passes and you can finally see the sky again. He remembered the way she used to laugh before it was performative, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about the future they once imagined. He didn't hate her for losing that light. He only mourned that she'd learned to hide it behind so many masks, even from herself. Healing didn't arrive all at once. It came in fragments. In a stranger's kind smile, in the joy of making coffee exactly the way he liked it, just for himself, in the relief of not walking on eggshells in his own home. One day, he walked past a couple in the park, young, laughing, arms tangled like ivy, and instead of bitterness, he felt something else. Gratitude. Not because of them, but because he remembered what love could look like when it was unafraid. And he knew that next time, if there was a next time, he'd choose it differently. He'd choose with his eyes open. What she took from him was real, but what she gave back, without knowing, was something better. The chance to begin again. This time, as someone he recognized. Ito.